The following is an Operation Podcast production.
These hormones are master regulators of the body, and probably one of the biggest hormones that's regulating the brain. The CEO of the female brain is estradiol, and that our brains have been reliant on estrogen rhythmically binding to receptor sites and controlling inflammation, managing energy metabolism in the brain. And a big part of what peri is not only are these hormones declining, but they are declining erratically, without permission. We start to see some pretty big brain changes. When I knew unequivocally that I was in perimenopause, because even, again, the subtle symptoms for me, I was like, oh, is this my thyroid? Am I working too hard? Am I burning the candle on both ends? Like, what's going on with me?
Am I just not motivated?
Yeah, how I knew was for 3 months in a row, around 7 days prior to my period. So halfway through that luteal phase, I would wake up with this deep sense of dread. Everything felt insurmountable. I didn't know how I was going to get through my days. I also would have these moments throughout my day where I would feel this just awful raging rage. And it just felt so uncontrollable. I felt so untethered. Hey, this is Dr. Mariza Snyder, author of The Perimenopause Revolution, and welcome to EverForward Radio.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show because we're talking about something that has loosely been covered on EverForward Radio, but I have not ever sat down with someone to just like go, all right, menopause, take me to school. What is it all about? And it's something that as a guy, I physically, personally can't relate to, but also just in my marriage, my wife has not hit perimenopause yet. So I have no kind of secondhand relation to it. So I'm really excited to have you dive into perimenopause, how and why it affects so many women, how and why we need to be having a bigger conversation about it, and just to prepare women, to prepare families, to prepare, the whole lifestyle that needs to go along with these hormonal changes, with anybody. And as we hit these kind of hormonal changes, male, female, 20s, 30s, 40s, hormones affect everything.
Everything. They are master regulators of the body.
And so with that, what exactly is perimenopause? I know this is a big question, but more specifically, how and why is it different from traditional menopause?
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's define, I think a lot of us know what menopause is, and let's just quickly define it. It's that one day where you haven't had a period for 12 consecutive months. And then from that point forward, you are in menopause. Now, menopause, the average age of menopause for every woman in the world, which is 50% of the population, right? So it's an inevitability for all of us unless you go into premature or early menopause. So average age for natural menopause is 51 years old, but it can be anywhere between 45 and 55. But we don't just get there. It's a process. So we think about puberty and how puberty was a good 8-year process. Whether we knew it or not,
Puberty's 8 years?
Give or take, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, especially for women.
Like 12 to 20 or
yes, 12 to 20.
Okay.
Or 11 to 19. And that is the ascension, heading into a cyclical monthly cycle where your hormones are rhythmically cycling every single month, right? And that happens for like 35 years, give or take. Now, once we head out of childbearing into menopause, where there's no more periods, there's no more menstrual cycle, but more importantly, no more reproductive hormones. That's more important to note. It's not just, I don't have a period anymore, I'm in menopause. No, there's a lot of physiological changes that are happening. But there's a transition known as your second puberty, which is perimenopause. So the 4 to 10 years or more, depending on the person, getting to menopause. And that transition is where these hormones and your ovulatory cycle begins to go offline. But it's not gradual. It's not easy. It's not some steady decline. For so many women, it is erratic, it is inconsistent, and it is chaos. And that is perimenopause. And so I can break it into kind of what is going on there.
Chaos. That is perimenopause. I'm terrified already, and we just got started.
I mean, I'm in it, and there are days where I'm like, woo, I am shook.
Man. Okay. So then at what age, you kind of hit on this, but at what age do most women start experiencing symptoms, even if they don't realize it?
Absolutely. So again, if we look at natural menopause between 45 and 55, and we reverse engineer that, kind of the earliest time we'll start to see symptoms shifting is mid to late 30s. Now, again, it can feel very subtle, because a lot of life is happening. Often we're maybe raising children, we're in our careers, we have endless obligations, and maybe we've already been struggling with things like low energy or a little bit of burnout, or our sleep has been a little bit off. But then it's kind of like those symptoms that maybe we've been dealing with that are lifestyle driven start to exacerbate. Okay. So in our mid to late 30s, we may notice that our recovery from exercise isn't what it used to be. We're having to recover longer. Maybe we're having to really change our workouts because we're not feeling great the next couple of days afterwards. Or maybe we notice that when we used to feel strong and steady and we were just at our edge, like we were just handling business, kicking butt, taking names, we're having to do that with more effort. Also, you may notice that you're having to, you're just getting more irritated. Your stress tolerance isn't what it used to be. Again, we can blame a lot of this on a lack of sleep, more stress, being a mom, maybe being a new mom. And yet also our hormones are changing. And so what I always tell women, two things to be looking out for is one, every cycle, our cycle, our monthly cycle is a monthly report card. So is it shifting? All of a sudden, are your PMS symptoms, instead of being 2 days, now they're 4 to 5 days? Are they feeling more intense? Have you noticed cycle changes? Or maybe has your cycle gone from 28 days to 27 or 26 days? And then also, every month, are the same type of symptoms continuing to show up? So I would say that's the subtle changes that start to happen in our late to like mid 30s to late 30s. And then I always say in our early to mid 40s, you ask the universe, send me a sign, make it impossible for me to miss. Like I find that's when women really know they're in perimenopause because it is impossible to miss. All of a sudden, it's almost undeniable that you aren't feeling like yourself anymore.
You were talking in kind of a way that made me believe that you have a clear understanding of your cycle, days and symptoms. Excuse my ignorance here, but is this common for most women? And the reason I asked, do most women have this clarity in terms of cycle duration and symptoms with their regular period that they need to be maybe begin to cultivate that awareness or even hyper awareness so that they can become more aware of these subtle changes to learn more about, hey, am I getting into perimenopause? Yeah,
absolutely. I would say even a decade ago, most of us did not know what was going on in our cycle. I would say there's a lot more awareness because of social media and conversations like this where like, oh, this monthly cycle, it's not just crappy periods, right? And PMS symptoms.
It's not just, about that time of month. Like you should be able to kind of know to the day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also that the entire cycle, things are shifting and changing. And so I think if there's anything that we walk away from, especially in perimenopause, as our monthly cycle is going to change and shift, mainly because our ovaries are slowly, erratically going offline and our hormones are following in suit, that the more information and data that you can have about your menstrual cycle, the more that you can understand what's going on with your body. Okay. Now, is changes in your menstrual cycle the only changes that are happening in perimenopause? Absolutely not. And that was a major kind of myth that we didn't understand. I think it really was because we used to believe, due to the lack of clinical research in women, that the only thing different between you and me, men and women, was that I was just a smaller version of you. And the only exceptions were bikini medicine. So anything that was covered by my bikini, my breast or my uterus and ovaries, like that would be the only way that I was different than you. And so we're beginning to realize that that is absolutely not true.
Yeah, thank God.
That physiologically, there's a lot of shifts and changes that are happening. And these rhythmically cycling hormones, so estrogen in both parts of the cycle, the follicular phase and the luteal phase, and progesterone only in the luteal phase. The only way that we can make progesterone is that we have to ovulate. Ovulate is the main event. So when I ovulate every month, hopefully that's happening consistently. I'm definitely skipping ovulatory cycles at this point at almost 46 years old. Well, I'll be 46 when this goes live. But when I ovulate, I then, that temporary endocrine structure, the corpus luteum, releases progesterone into the luteal phase, that progestation hormone. Because whether I am prepping to get pregnant every month or not, my body is prepping to do so. And so the more that we can understand what's going on with our cycle, we can kind of start to pick up on the nuances of, in the follicular phase of my cycle, I always feel good. I feel energized. I feel strong. Like I can do some big stuff. I can really show up in the world. In the luteal phase of my cycle, I'm more inward. I tailor my workouts on the days that I'm not feeling so great. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when I knew unequivocally that I was in perimenopause, because even again, the subtle symptoms for me, I was like, oh, is this my thyroid? Am I working too hard? Am I burning the candle on both ends? Like what's going on with me?
But how not motivated or
I don't know. I've never
feeling human.
Never had that issue. But but a lack of motivation definitely plays a role. How I knew was for 3 months in a row, around 7 days prior to my period, and not 3, not 4, but 7. So halfway through that luteal phase, I would wake up with this deep sense of dread. That all of a sudden,
That's a pretty
it was
hardcore
awful.
Emotion.
Yeah, everything felt insurmountable. I didn't know how I was going to get through my days. And I also would have these moments throughout my day where I would feel this just awful, raging rage. And it just felt so uncontrollable. I felt so untethered. And I was like, what is going on with me? Like this feels so uncontrollable. And it would pretty much lead into my period. And the first 2 months, I had a brain injury earlier that year. I thought, oh, maybe this is one of those symptoms of major concussions, rage and mood issues. Yeah. So I had been diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome, and I was like, oh, maybe that's what this is. But then it was consistent, like clockwork, on my 22nd day every single month for 3 months in a row. And I remember on that third month, it was October, and I was like, this is perimenopause. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like when your brain is massively shifting and reorganizing. This is what it feels like when progesterone levels aren't where they are normally at. This is what it feels like when estrogen begins to decline. And that's when I knew, like, make it impossible for me to miss that this was perimenopause.
When you had that realization, or when you go, okay, wow, I'm in perimenopause, was there any sense of relief that came with it because it kind of gives a reason as to these symptoms? Or did you have to go through some kind of period of like acceptance of this next transition of your life that maybe added more worry or, to your point, dread to the situation?
That's such a great question. So I think it was a yes and. One, I was so grateful to know that it wasn't something else.
Yeah.
Because I had run labs multiple times that year trying to figure out what was going on. I even remember going back to my GP because we have phenomenal insurance, and I had a list of labs. And I was like, I need to get these labs ran. And I remember her saying to me, she's like, you've been coming in a couple of times this year with these issues. And she's like, and you haven't figured it out yet. She's like, I don't really have anything for you. And I was like, I remember looking at her point blank, and I was saying, listen, I know you have nothing for me.
Oh, man.
That's why I need these labs.
Yeah.
I can interpret these labs. Let me just run the labs. Let me see what's going on, and I can go from there. And so I think so many women come into this transition, feeling blindsided, feeling like their brain is untethered, feeling like their energy levels are tanking or their motivation is going away, that whatever their slight edge was is just fluttering, and they're trying to find answers. And that was me. Like, I was like, what is going on? And I mean, if I did the math, I was basically turning 44. It was perimenopause, but I wasn't sure. And so I will say that once I knew what it was, I was like, okay, I know what I'm dealing with now. And I know that this is a transition that I'm in, and there's a lot of things at my disposal that I can do. But also, I knew that I was walking into a reckoning, and I was like, okay, I need to really shore up my non-negotiables. And I have a standard and values about how I want to show up in the world, not only for my son and my family, but for the women I get to serve. And when I am feeling blindsided and untethered, and I can't seem to get a hold of my emotions, I was like, okay, I need to take a major step back and bring the tools in and recalibrate myself so I don't find myself like this every single month, a good week out of my month.
Wow. What you just said right there, I hope any woman listening, watching goes back and kind of like plays twice. I think that is such a profound and important part of any experience we have in life, whether it's, something that we know and we're aware of and we plan for, getting ready for this transition, whether it's in a relationship or a career, or maybe you choose to just do something drastically different in your life. But to go through this kind of biological transition, and to also have that same level of, I'll say, self-talk about, being a hype woman, getting ready for this and just reminding, like I heard you say, I have a standard of life. I have a standard of life that I'm going to do my damnedest to keep during this transition. But, basically, we have to kind of also understand that, biology is going to be doing its thing. And as much as we may want to or not do something, we have to kind of just go with the flow, no pun intended here. But it's just, I think if a lot of women don't have any kind of semblance of the mindset component to the biological component, they're probably going to find themselves just hands up in the air, giving up maybe, or just, succumbing to a lot of these symptoms and not living the life that they want to.
No, absolutely. I am not disillusioned with what's happening with my body. I know that there's some major physiological changes, including my brain is reorganizing. My bones are not rebuilding in the same capacity that they used to. My muscle is default, I'm losing it. If I don't do something about it, I'm losing my strength if I don't do something about it. My cardiovascular health is shifting. My metabolic health is shifting. And so if I'm on a default path and I'm not being proactive about what is happening with my body on a physiological level in this, what I call this transition of vulnerability, but also transition of opportunity, right? I'm at a fork in a road. I could go the default path and I could just be told, oh, this is just aging. This is just what happens to me. This is just the course. Or I could decide, no, I get to choose how I want to live this transition. But also, I'm looking at the next 40 years of my life. I'm looking at how I want to show up with the freedom and the choices to have independence. Yeah. To pick up my grandchildren off the floor, to shot put my luggage into the overhead compartment at 5'2". I'd throw it, or to grab it out of the overhead compartment and put it down in a very measured way without help. So I'm thinking about all of those things. So not only how am I mitigating the symptoms, particularly the brain changes that I'm experiencing right now, but then how do I future-proof my health for the next 40 plus years?
Okay. So you mentioned the brain a few times.
Yeah.
I think you said reorganizing. And you just said, a lot of brain changes. It seems like that might be a bigger component to perimenopause than I think a lot of people realize. Can you walk us through what are some of these major or even subtle brain changes that are happening as someone enters perimenopause?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that these hormones are master regulators of the body. And probably one of the biggest hormones that's regulating the brain, the CEO of the female brain is estrogen. And that our brains have been reliant on estrogen rhythmically binding to receptor sites and controlling inflammation, managing energy metabolism in the brain. I mean, she is NASA for the brain. And so we get into peri, and a big part of what peri is not only are these hormones declining, but they are declining erratically without permission. The brain definitely did not want it. The brain's like, whoa. Like, I need that consistent estrogen going on every single month. And so as we start to uncouple the ovaries from the brain and hormones begin to erratically uncouple from the brain as well, we start to see some pretty big brain changes. We know that we see a reduction in white matter and gray matter in the brain that's connected to memory and cognition. We know that we can lose up to 25% of energy metabolism of the brain. And when you think about the brain, it's the most energy craving driven organ of the entire body. We also know that estrogen is directly connected to the binding of important neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And so when I look at perimenopausal symptoms, particularly with my patients and what they're coming into me with, is a lot of brain related symptoms. I would say the most common symptoms of perimenopause, especially in the beginning, are going to be brain related. This isn't just hot flashes and night sweats and low libido and vaginal dryness and maybe some sleep issues. But just know that 3 of those symptoms are brain related, right? This is a cacophony of brain related symptoms, from anxiety to depression to ADHD to low stress tolerance to brain fog and memory lapses, lack of word recall, night sweats, hot flashes, sleep issues. All of these things All of that is brain related. And when we start to lose that resilience, our capacity for our brain to function, the number one most common thing you'll hear from women in perimenopause is that I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't recognize myself anymore. I am not able to do the things that I used to do. And I feel like the rug is like being pulled under me.
Is there anything that someone can do to specifically target brain health to help get ahead of or even mitigate a lot of these brain health symptoms of perimenopause? Or is it all just need to be focused on the hormone estrogen?
I mean, a part of it. I mean, if that's the reason why we're struggling, I mean, I think having a conversation as early as possible about your options around HRT, hormone replacement therapy, I think is important. You know, if full disclosure, I have an estrogen patch on. You know, I cycle progesterone, and I also have testosterone, and I'm on thyroid medication. And so I'm taking
nice
all the
cocktail.
hormones, a little cocktail that's really optimized and tailored for me. And even in perimenopause, that cocktail of hormones will change because everything's going to keep changing, right? That's the thing about peri is that it's not static. It's going to constantly change. But particularly for the brain, again, if energy metabolism is a big part of how our brain is functioning or it is just defunctioning. So if we take a look at dementia and Alzheimer's, we know that 67% of people who suffer from that are going to be women. You know,
really?
So we know that the changes that happen in perimenopause.
That's because of the perimenopause changes. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's because of that loss of estrogen and the increase in neuroinflammation, the decrease in energy metabolism of the brain, mitochondrial dysfunction. We start to see, so this is that window of opportunity.
Okay.
So besides hormones, have the conversation, please. The sooner the better to just have the conversation. If your doctor doesn't prescribe, hasn't prescribed, doesn't know how to talk to you about them, it's time to just get another doctor, right? We've gone a whole generation where doctors stop prescribing hormone replacement therapy. So there's a lot of doctors who just don't know how to do it anymore because they've never done it. So just a heads up there. Also, because again, the energy metabolism piece is so critical here. We always think about dementia as type 3 diabetes. Yeah. Managing and optimizing your blood glucose as best as you can. And so that is eating meals that prioritize protein, prioritize fiber, walking away from refined carbs, walking away from lots of excess processed sugar, added sugar, just being really mindful that at this time where the brain is more vulnerable, balancing our blood sugar becomes key. Another thing that I think really moves the needle is building your life around movement. So I love the big heavy lifting workout I do in the morning, super early in the morning before my son even wakes up. And if I sit on my butt for 5 to 6 hours a day, a lot of that's gonna be negated.
Yeah.
And some women just can't do it. You know, their kid wakes up at 5 a.m. when they're supposed to go to the gym because they're sick. You know, things come up. You know, sometimes my son is up at 6:15 when I'm about to walk out the door and I ain't walking out the door anymore, right? It all just changes. It depends on what's going on. And so my recommendation is building movement. So I was doing squats before I walked into this studio.
Of course.
Of course I was. I just sat in the car for 3 hours. Yeah. I knocked out 60 squats before I walked in here. I love exercise snacks. And it's just, we're talking about 1 to 3 minutes of movement that kind of revs your heart rate, whether it's jump squats or it's mountain climbers or it's push-ups or it's walking up and down your stairs, something that just kind of gets you back in focus, like it fires your brain, fires your body, helps to balance your blood sugar, supports your metabolism. So just moving throughout the day. It doesn't have to be the one big 45-minute, 55-minute workout. If anything, it's really punctuating your day with as much movement as possible that I think is really where the juice is worth the squeeze.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think someone maybe experiencing perimenopause symptoms such as brain fog and these kind of brain health related symptoms, before they even get into anything else, before HRT, just to kind of cap this point, just maybe adding if they're not, or adding more if they are, exercise, just physical activity.
Physical activity
can do that. And is there like a number of like, all right, I'm getting 8,000 steps a day, I need to add 25%. I need to double it. If I'm doing a 20-minute workout, I need to do a 45-minute workout. Is there any kind of like magical quantitative formula here for this?
No, I would say, I mean, there's a lot of research that's coming out about movement and brain health. Yeah. Absolutely. And we know that how to future-proof your brain, the number one thing that we know, besides estrogen, is to move.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, physical activity or considered physical activity is 7,500 steps or more. I think very active is over 11,000 steps or more. So I would say, yeah, if you're tracking your, I think we have Apple Watch, and you're double dipping with your Whoop. Yeah, we got, you got your, so I would say track. Get a Fitbit, get a Garmin, get a Whoop. I'm a big Whoop fan.
Yeah.
And track your steps. And see if you can average. If you're averaging only 5,000 to 6,000, I would take it up to 7.
Okay.
If you have a break after a Zoom meeting, a work meeting, knock out 10 squats.
This exercise snack you were talking about.
Yeah, the exercise snack. Okay. Yeah. And then move, at the very least, move after meals.
Okay.
If ideally it's a 10 to 15 minute walk, but I don't live in the ideally either. My son wants me to build Legos. That's what he wants me to do. He doesn't want to take a walk outside. And he's 4.5 years old. It is what it is. And so I call it a buy-in, either before a meal or after a meal.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I love buy-ins.
I like that.
I buy-in before this interview.
Yeah.
A buy-in before I go and do something else. So I do a lot of buy-ins.
I like that.
And so I do a basically 60 jump squat buy-in after a meal, before a meal, or when I walk into a meeting or something like that. So that's how I operate. So yeah, even if you can integrate 3 sets of 60 jump squats throughout your day, and if you can't do jump squats, just squats, I will tell you, you will notice your brain is more sharper. You'll notice more physical energy. You will sleep better and have more sleep quality. And more importantly, you're going to balance your blood sugar and support your metabolism.
Okay.
So those have been some of the big wins around this research.
No, I'm not in perimenopause, and I doubt I ever will be. But today, for example, I was not able to schedule in my workout. And so what I did instead was got up early, took the dog out, small walk, and I hopped in the cold plunge. Is something like that, can that be a buy-in for a woman going through perimenopause? Something just like, if they can't do a workout, they can still get a nice, air quote here, shock to the system to increase heart rate, increase alertness, add some kind kind of
hormetic stressor.
Yeah, there we go.
Hormetic stressor.
Yeah,
I think so.
The same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think we. If you're overly stressed, you're overly burned out, you be mindful about extended cold plunging. But yeah, a little cold plunge if you got it. I mean, I want to make things like, if you don't have a cold plunge, you don't have the resources, cold shower for 2 minutes, or again, knock out a couple squats, or get outside in nature, get sunlight on your eyes for 5 minutes, any of these things, 3 shots of espresso. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say 3 shots. Where are we going with this?
I'm kidding.
And, someone might also be hearing this and going, okay, all right, to get ahead of perimenopause symptoms or to alleviate them, I'm just going to go all out. Maybe I normally do yoga, but I'm going to go do a HIIT workout. Is there any benefit, or is there more danger for a woman experiencing these symptoms, actually going through perimenopause, to just go full on in their workout, to try to if I'm feeling this way with my normal workout, if I increase my intensity like crazy or do the hardest workout I can, that's going to kill the symptoms? Or is that going to be detrimental in some way?
I love that question, because I know that's what I did.
Yeah, you're trying to rage against the machine, right? You're no, I'm not dead yet. I'm fighting, grasping for straws, and so you try to just do all you can.
Yeah, I think we go back to the traditional approaches of what we've been told, or what our doctor even says, which is, eat a little less, calorie restrict, and work a little bit harder. And especially those HIIT workouts or those extended cardio workouts. But we're finding that isn't. If our muscle is our our longevity organ, right? Particularly for insulin resistance and overall just feeling strong and able, and having our brain fire on all cylinders, I want us to be mindful about how we are making sure that we're maintaining our maintaining our muscle or building muscle. And I don't think extended HIIT training is going to get the job done there. So I think we got to be more strategic. So I did the HIIT training, and I completely burned out and obliterated. And so what I would ask any woman, if you get done with that workout and for the rest of the day you're like a puddle on the floor, you have no capacity for anything else, we got to rethink.
Probably too much.
Okay. Yeah, way too much. And so if you find your stress capacity is going beyond what you can manage because of that big workout, or that especially high intensity interval training workout, then we've got to be a little bit more strategic. I'd say most of your workouts, you want to be looking at building muscle. That's your metabolic sink. That is going to be your longevity organ. So, and it doesn't have to be a 50-minute weight training or resistance training workout. It can be 30 minutes. Like if you're good and strategic about how you train, you don't have to spend a lot of time. Now, but if you couldn't do that, then maybe it's 2-minute bouts throughout the day of like mini HIIT workouts, instead of like this 45-minute HIIT training workout. So I think sprint training and mini HIIT training workouts are very beneficial.
Okay.
Again, interspersed throughout your day so that you can get back to doing what you're doing.
Okay.
But those really elongated ones where you just feel like you're burned out on the other side, I think that's actually doing more harm than good.
Okay.
And every woman's going to be a little bit different. But again, during this time of perimenopause, when we see more increased inflammation, our stress resilience just isn't what it used to be. You may find yourself having to tailor. So keep it tighter, keep it shorter. If you're like, okay, where do I even start? You can always hire a personal trainer to help you walk through this. But there's so many great programs online that really walk us through. I have workout programs that I built into the book, and I'm releasing. I have a whole exercise snack series that I'm releasing as well to make it simple, right? But yeah, I would say where the juice is worth the squeeze is resistance training at least 2 to 4 times a week. Ideally sprint training, and we're talking 1 to 2 minutes, and it can be in your room. It can be all out mountain climbers. It can be all out jump squats, or you can go and run a track, whatever you want to do. And then walk. Move your butt. Be physically active. Like try to clock at least. I still think ideally 10,000 steps a day should be the goal.
Do you ever, and this might be getting into a little nuance here, but do you worry about someone going through perimenopause, hearing this, specifically the muscle building workout focus, who maybe hasn't always had that? And where I'm going with this is anytime we get into muscle building, hypertrophy, we're adding weight, we're adding muscle, our bodies are increasing our metabolic rate, our thermogenic rate. And we might already be experiencing some issues with weight gain, weight loss, muscle atrophy. So is that adding insult to injury here? Is it something else the body's going to have to work on? And then mentally we're going, okay, well, I'm focusing on building muscle, but I need to maybe eat a little bit more calories, focus on increasing protein, and I'm having trouble just maintaining my composition as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So that is definitely what's both happening, where women composition changes are happening, but a lot of that composition change is happening partly because we are losing that muscle. So some of that is happening. The other reason why we're losing that is estrogen is declining, and so is progesterone, and we start to take on a more androgenic kind of body type, which is more that belly fat and even that visceral fat. And so for some of us, testosterone isn't dropping entirely the way that progesterone and estrogen is, and so we do see that androgen, even if the weight or the scale hasn't moved.
Right. Yeah.
So I still think, in the research that I've looked at, that the consistency of us moving throughout the day, strategically balancing blood sugar, because if insulin resistance is one of the reasons why we see that body composition change due to the lack of estradiol, the more that we can be moving throughout the day and then again punctuating our week with building muscle, I still think that is very much the direction we need to go.
So maybe don't get caught up in that kind of the nuance of the weight. I don't want to say issue, but just if we're focusing on building muscle, that overall is going to have better downstream effects for perimenopause as a whole than maybe focusing on just like, okay, I'm building muscle, I need to eat a little bit more, I'm choosing to eat maybe a little bit more protein, and not getting too in our head about like the number on the scale issue right now. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, I know weight is a concern, goodness knows, and when your body is changing without permission, especially the weight part.
Yeah, especially when it's not by your choice.
Yeah, you're like, wait, I'm doing all the things. Like, this is unfair. And, a lot of women were never even acknowledged for, I think doctors were just like, well, maybe you are not doing the thing you said you're doing, and so, but no, we know now that as estrogen declines, we become more insulin resistant. We lose that sensitivity. We know we are losing muscle. We know that we're losing bone. We know that body composition changes are happening. All of these things are happening. Our metabolic health is shifting. And so I'm coming from a metabolic perspective. How do we preserve your metabolic health when so many of us yes, become vulnerable after the age of 45 due to the decline of estradiol, how do I shore up your aliveness? How do I shore up your cardiovascular health, your brain health? It's at the epicenter of your metabolic health and your hormones. And so, yes, I want to be addressing the body composition changes because nobody wants that. And when we start to see more visceral belly fat and belly fat, we know that that is a danger in its own right. But more importantly, I'm looking at your health span and lifespan 30, 40 years out. So yes, let's address the body composition changes, but more importantly, how are we protecting your cellular vitality?
Okay. Weight gain during perimenopause happens,
yes.
right? We'll say maybe probably 9 out of 10 women, or majority of women are going to experience weight gain. We just talked about maybe you're building muscle. So maybe that's, I'll say a positive weight gain. We're building more muscle, which is always better than adding more fat. But when specifically looking at perimenopause, is total weight gain more of a concern or the placement of the weight, the placement of the body fat? You said maybe more adipose tissue around the belly, or what if we see it in our arms or our thighs? Is the location of the weight gain we're seeing or feeling, does it matter more in terms of health detriment compared to just the total number on the scale?
Yeah, I would say, any woman, if I'm a woman talking to you right now, who's 45 years old and who's seen body composition changes on me, who's seen, weight gain happen, and have had to make some pivots, I would tell you there is no place I want it to be.
Right.
That it wasn't there before. But no, I would say the area that is most concerning that lends to less protection is going to be the belly fat, right? We know that becomes, especially the visceral belly fat, becomes its own kind of endocrine structure that is, becoming very inflammatory. And we know that there's a independent risk factor for visceral belly fat for cardiovascular disease. And when cardiovascular disease is affecting 1 in 2 women, it very much needs to be on our radar. So I would personally, I'd love it more on my butt than I would, on my belly.
But is that something maybe a woman should be paying more attention to? Again, I'm just trying to think of you're going through changes, and you might be looking at a change on the scale. So what are some things that we can be looking for to maybe get away from, worry about that number on the scale and focus on things that matter, not necessarily worry? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I think when we're going through this transition and our body is changing without permission, it's going to lend to a little bit of worry. Where the focus I really want women to focus on is, okay, how do I feel more energized? How do I feel more resilient? How do I ensure that I am shoring up my bones and my muscle and my overall metabolic health? How am I looking at my numbers? I think those are the things that are going to matter most in terms of the long term. The big pillars is, okay, how am I eating for my metabolic health? How am I moving? I would say if there was a magic pill besides HRT, it's going to be movement.
Okay.
A big part of this journey is going to be movement. And then, how am I building a plan and how am I being open to pivoting as I see my body changing?
Okay. And what about chronic stress, poor sleep, and modern living? What roles do these play in intensifying perimenopause symptoms?
They play a huge role. And I think that's why it gets a little bit messy. We have a lot of women who are moms in this transition or who have a lot of things going on. I always say that this transition is almost laughable. It's like, how is it that we are managing a household, taking care of kids? I was ordering shoes online yesterday for my son. I think about all the many tasks that are running through my mind just as a mom. Supporting our partners, the endless obligations. I have aging parents that are having struggles. A mother-in-law who just had a major concussion, and so there's always things that are happening. My sister who's already had a stroke and who has type 2 diabetes. And so I was just talking to my mom about my sister's health situation that is always evolving, and I'm very much involved in that. I never know when I'm going to get that call from a family member who's having some health issues that I need to step in and support. And so you think about all these things. It's like a high stakes game, And then here we are. Our bodies are changing. Our mental health is potentially shifting, and not necessarily in a good way. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to take on. And so I think we used to just blame it on stress. We used to just blame it on the lifestyle. And we used to just blame it on, well, it's all in your head, right? That was kind of always the narrative up until maybe a decade ago. And when you kind of intercept all the lifestyle and all the stresses and the lack of sleep, and the thing about sleep is that it feels like it's like the chicken or the egg. Like, was my sleep disrupted because of my hormones? Are my hormones disrupted because of my sleep? Like, where does it start and when does it end? It just becomes like this crazy spiral. And I think it's like 67% of women, once they're in perimenopause or over the age of 40, are going to have sleep issues. And we know that if someone doesn't gets, let's say they only average 5 hours of sleep, like 4 days in a row, they could actually be diagnosed with prediabetes. Like, that's how serious. I think about, new parents, and how, you think about a new mom in perimenopause, it's, so we know that all of these other aspects of living this life, this very modern day life, is impacting the big changes that are happening in the body. And I think what the through line is one, knowing, recognizing, you're like, okay, my body is changing. And I know it's changing. I can feel it's changing. And I also still have all of these obligations, people who rely on me, people who depend on me every day. And I also know that if I don't start to prioritize myself in a world that is telling me to prioritize everything and everyone else, it's not going to go well for me in terms of how I feel moving down the road.
But realistically, what does that look like? How can a mom, a working professional, someone who's a caretaker, has all these other people, places, things, responsibilities on her plate? How does she really go, realistically, practically go, wait a minute, I need to focus on me right now while not letting all these other obligations fall?
Absolutely. I mean, we just all become super women. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Okay. So I think first, if you have a partner, it's communicating with your partner. So I'm always in constant communication with my partner, what I have capacity for that day. I mean, I don't think any relationship, especially when you're a family, that it's a 50-50. You hear Brene Brown talking about that, of like checking in, like, where are you at versus where am I at? And then kind of reconfiguring. Yesterday, I had a very debilitating migraine. Honestly, I don't know any other flavor of migraine.
Yeah, it's not like, a fun one.
No, yeah. And I really hope that I didn't have a migraine hangover today for this interview. But I let Alex know immediately. I wake up with them at 6 a.m. and they're not going anywhere. And so I let him know. And so later in the evening, as all the medicine and everything we're wearing down, Alex did the whole sleep routine with Kingston. And so it's just a lot of communication about, okay, I just don't have the bandwidth to show up, just having that conversation and then building in, time for yourself, whether that is 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever that looks like. If it means getting up a little bit earlier before everyone else, or really honoring your sleep routine. I always say that sleep will make or break me. Like, depending on what sleep I get the night before, it'll really determine how I can perform the next day.
What's your sleep routine? How do you try your hardest to get the best, most consistent sleep possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So after Kingston does we do his sleep routine. Yeah. And I'm just like, we think about these kids who have these his sleep routine is consistent, like every single day.
Oh, I know now. Yeah.
Yeah. We have blackout curtains in all of the rooms. Everything's dimmed, but he's in bed. Lights are off. Everything's done. 8 o'clock. I take my supplements at 8:30. 8:45.
What do you take?
I'm taking magnesium. I'm taking my omega sometimes at night. I am taking a type of sleep support supplement. It has L-theanine in it, 5-HTP. Okay, it's got chamomile. It's got all kinds of goodies in it. And
you take the same kind of sleep supplement cocktail
every night. Yeah. Okay. Except for the second half of my cycle, I'm also taking progesterone in the second half of my cycle, about between 100 and 200 milligrams, depending on where I'm at in that luteal phase. So that kicks off my sleep. That's a signal to the brain.
And this is around 8:30?
8:45, 8:30. Okay. Yeah. Then I go to my room and I shut the door. Nobody's coming into this room.
That was a power move right there. If you're watching the video, I feel like shutting the door is like mama's in sleep mode.
Yeah, do not mess with me. I am now, unless you have $1 million meeting with me, like, do not talk to me about anything. Don't talk to me about whatever's happening to Kingston the next day, or we have a headline that I need to approve. Well, I don't care. No.
Why is that? Is that just you're trying to like so definitively decompress and separate from the day, or is it just like turning off the monkey mind? Or are you going into meditate? Like, okay.
Yeah, all of it. So the phone is put away, phone's gone, all of it's gone. I don't want to be, I can easily just go into mom mode. I can go into CEO mode. I can go into, there's so many things that need to be done all the time, right? Chase, I mean, that's life.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
And so, but it's a full body stop. It's a hard no. It's a full stop. There's none of that is $1 million meeting for me. Not as critical as getting sleep. So then I'm in bed. I brushed my teeth, did the whole skin routine. All of that is done. Went to the bathroom. I've got my water, emotional support water by the bed. And even my bathroom door gets shut. Like, I am closed into the bedroom. Lights are super dim and they're red. I've got blue blockers on and I am reading. I am reading a romantic fantasy book, most likely, some type of fiction book. And lights are off and I am going to bed 9:30. My sleep consistency is so core to everything about my day, like how I'm going to feel the next day. So lights are off at 9:30, at the latest 9:45. I don't even need an alarm. I am up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Now, did this kind of sleep routine start during or because of perimenopause, or did you always have this and you felt like it helped your perimenopause experience?
No, it started because of perimenopause. Because of perimenopause and because of my post-concussion syndrome. So that's when I really began to realize like how mission critical my brain was. And I did, you think you can get away with inconsistent sleep. You think you can we can't. We really cannot. Like, I did. In my 20s, I got away with it. In my early 30s, I got away with it. It's just like drinking alcohol. Like, it is a full body no. Like, I always think about, how am I supporting my future brain? And sleep is such a big pillar of that. What I eat and put into my body is a big pillar of that. Not drinking is a huge pillar of that. But I know when I wake up in the morning and I'm ready to go, because I'm going to the gym. That's what I'm doing. That if I got great sleep, if I got consistent sleep, quality sleep, that I can crush my day.
Okay. Is there any worry or concern for a misdiagnosis of perimenopause for maybe the woman hearing these symptoms or these lifestyle changes? Maybe their doctors told them, hey, you're in perimenopause, like too soon, or it's actually something else. Is there any concern in terms of symptom masking or just blatant misdiagnosis of perimenopause? And if so, are there any inherent dangers in that? If a physician or somebody tells a woman, hey, you're in perimenopause, and she goes about making these changes, is that detrimental to her health, or is it just, putting the cart before the horse, so to speak?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I think, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of social, perimenopause is having a massive moment right now. And I think the reason why is women are like, wait, I've been feeling like crap for a long time, and now we have a way of defining what it is. But also I think that that's not always the reason why we don't feel great, right? It could be we're dealing with insulin resistance and we don't know it, or maybe polycystic ovarian syndrome and we don't know it. Which
even in these kind of key age
I would say,
ranges
mid to late 30s, early 40s, or we could be dealing with a thyroid issue. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis when I was 38, right before I was trying to get ready to get pregnant, and I took a whole year off, and it easily looked like perimenopause. And I had low progesterone levels. Easily could have been, it could have been perimenopause at that time as well, but it was very clearly a thyroid issue, right? And so
could have been perimenopause
so it absolutely could have been. At the time, I was looking more at the inflammatory markers, the blood sugar markers, the metabolic markers, and then also my thyroid markers. And so a lot of the things that I recommend in this book, I did at that time. One, because I knew I was prepping to get pregnant at 40, so I was doing a lot of these things as well. But yeah, I think we really need to be looking at the whole picture. When I look at a patient, I'm looking at her symptoms, I'm looking at her labs, I'm looking at her goals, And I'm looking at her lifestyle, how her everyday is looking, and making a, kind of reading the tea leaves from there and making a plan with her.
Okay.
So all of that needs to be considered. I think a lot of us come into Peri already dealing with other health issues. I don't think very many of us come into Peri super healthy, like with a clean bill of health, not living in this modern day world, with toxins and extra stress and sleep issues and blood sugar issues. I think many of us are coming into Peri, and then perimenopause is like the fuel on the fire.
Is there ever a situation where it could be non-symptomatic perimenopause, and thus, therefore, the woman goes undiagnosed, not misdiagnosed, but undiagnosed, and therefore losing, a treatable window?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because whether you know it, silently your bone is beginning to, not rebuild. Silently, your muscle is.
Are we talking full-blown sarcopenia there? Like
no,
bone density loss?
Yeah, in perimenopause, we are losing but in the first 2 or 3 years of menopause, we have lost up to 20% of our bone. That's happening in Peri. It's a silent shift. Our cardiometabolic health is changing. I look at women's labs at 42, and then I'm looking at them in a timeline into like at 48. Everything was great, and now her labs are out of range. So there's silent shifts happening. Your strength is changing and shifting and declining. Your muscle mass is declining. We know this is happening. These are the silent shifts that are happening. So yes, can women go through? I would say millions of women have gone through perimenopause, and we have missed all of this.
Damn. Yikes. Well, I want to jump now into what you've talked about a little bit, and that's HRT, hormone replacement therapy. I feel like due to the world of, social media, telemedicine, telehealth really taking off, and in my opinion, a lot of good ways and definitely some ways still room for improvement over the last several years. Yeah. We've brought education and access to care and cost has just been cut tremendously. People who desperately need this kind of work can get access in the middle of nowhere in a food desert. And also because of, the scale of economics, so to speak, where there's a lot of competition. So people don't need to just, save up thousands of dollars to go to a specialty in the big city. They can, for $99, get a telehealth consult, get these labs drawn. Some companies will even send a phlebotomist, to your house. So there's really no barrier to entry here except for, do you have internet access and do you have an extra $100 typically? But that doesn't always mean that a woman should get hormone replacement therapy. Hormones are super delicate. And so I feel like with access to care, with lower costs, someone might just be jumping the gun, so to speak, and just going, oh, I need HRT. This worked for my friend. Or because it's so easy and because it's so cheap now, like it just has to work for me. And so I can find someone to give it to me. Walk us through the key considerations and maybe your preferred labs or just kind of, experience when a woman should be getting this information and then considering with a provider, is HRT right for me? And then what does the actual care period look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great question. I mean, hormone replacement therapy, I feel like we're kind of coming into a new age, and the pendulum is swinging. Still with that, there's still only around 6% of us on HRT in the U.S., women. And that number's changing.
That's pretty low. That's women overall or just women in perimenopause?
Well, mostly women in perimenopause and menopause on HRT.
HRT.
It's still a very low number. Yeah. Before the Women's Health Initiative in the 90s, when it was like the number one prescribed drug, it was about 40% of women. Again, and only in menopause then, very few women in peri, because we didn't have it.
I want to hijack my own question here. I'm sorry. Going from 40 to 6%, that's a huge drop. Is that just because, you were talking earlier about so many providers just stop prescribing it
immediately?
Why such a huge drop?
Yeah, so the Women's Health Initiative was a very defining study, one of the biggest studies of its kind, looking at women. We wanted to see the relationship between HRT and heart risk or heart benefit. Did it mitigate breast cancer or cancer? And we wanted to see what happened with women as they got older on hormone replacement therapy. And so these studies started in the 90s, mid 90s, and one of them was halted. They were both halted in 2002 and 2004. And there was a big outcry, and it's all been walked back now, but that the arm where women were on basically synthetic estrogen. Mind you, these were all synthetic hormones. These were not bioidentical hormones, and synthetic progestins. So
can you, sorry, I'm familiar with that, but can you walk us through the difference between synthetic and bioidentical?
Yeah,
hormones,
absolutely.
please?
So bioidentical, okay, all of them are made in the lab. So just letting you know that. But bioidentical is identical to the molecular structure of the hormones that are made in our body. The synthetic, whether it's conjugated equine estrogen, which was Premarin, the big estrogen medication that was being recommended, and then Premarin, which was a combination of a progestin and the conjugated equine estrogen. These were they're synthetic. They are not of molecular structure identical to the ones that we make in our body. So that's what was used in the Women's Health Initiative. Okay. So what we learned a lot of lessons in that, but unfortunately, there wasn't one extra case in 1,000. So instead of 4 in 1,000, there was 5 in 1,000 cases of breast cancer. And because of that, it looked like the, absolute risk was something crazy, like 25% increase when it was literally less than a percentage. And so it was newsworthy. It was all over the headlines. And literally abruptly in 2002, like almost 80% of women who were on HRT were pulled from HRT. Wow. And then we've gone, now it's 2025, I would say up until 2022, the majority of providers, medical providers, have not been prescribing it for a generation. And so now here we are.
Properly, I should say, retrained on it, or they're just we saw this study, we saw this data, we're anti-estrogen right now. Is there a definitive reason?
Yeah. So, it's the information and the education has swiftly shifted and changed into what we know is that estrogen is a beautiful preventative hormone and that it is cardiovascular protective, it is bone protective, it is general urinary system protective, it is muscle protective. Like we were beginning to realize, like the more and more research is coming out that it is brain protective, particularly when we are giving it to women in perimenopause and in menopause. It's when, as we get way out, if a woman's been 20 years out of menopause and she's looking to start HRT for the first time, there are definitely considerations. We want to do more screenings to make sure that she's a candidate or a great host for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then walk us back to, I'm a woman hearing this and I want to, take action. What is the best process for me for looking at HRT, for getting labs, whether it's through telehealth or coming through, a clinic, and then what's just like the safest, best way to go about consideration of HRT?
Absolutely. Again, you should know that when it comes to peri particularly, there's no lab test. We don't have a lab test to.
So you're not going to get results back and be like, "Yep,
perimenopause, you hit it." Yeah, no. So it's symptoms. It's symptom driven. That's the clinical presentation of peri. One, it's your age. Are your cycles at all changing? Anything going on with your menstrual cycle? And even you could be in peri before your menstrual cycle begins to change. And and so we used to think, the CDC. If you look at the CDC right now, perimenopause starts at 47 years old. Because we just didn't know. We all just thought that it was just the last couple of years before menopause. And we got it all wrong, and so we know that it's many years before that, well before your cycle begins to change or it begins to skip, that hormones had been changing and declining. And so the only way we can really diagnose peri is with symptoms. So if you go to your provider, I still want labs as a provider. I still want to see it's not just hormones. I may catch you on a great day with your hormones. Your hormones look great that day. It doesn't mean that you are feeling great. But what are your inflammatory markers showing me? What are your metabolic markers showing me? All of those are shifting too, due to these very protective hormones shifting. And so I want to see everything.
Are there some markers more important than others we should be looking at for perimenopause, despite being symptomatic or not?
Absolutely. One, I think we should always look at a hormone profile. We should be looking at estradiol and progesterone and testosterone. We should be looking at a full thyroid panel.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah,
we should be looking. Okay. Yeah, we should know that information. But then we should also know what your fasting insulin is, what your highly sensitive CRP is, where your vitamin D levels are, a full iron panel. Make sure that you're not anemic. Looking at B vitamins and magnesium, looking at a full lipid panel, including ApoB and lipoprotein little a. Like if if more women die of heart disease than men, I want to be looking at those numbers, and I want to see are these things shifting? I want to be looking at homocysteine and SED rate. I want to get a great sense of what is going on with your overall cardiometabolic health. And perimenopause is the shifting point, is that moment of vulnerability when those labs begin to change. I want to see all of it. And so when you're working with a provider, yes, a lot of the telemedicine companies, you have some symptoms, you want some HRT, and you're prescribed.
Yeah, you say a few keywords.
Yeah, and you're
quick
in.
Little Google search of what to say in your telehealth call, and you can kind of quote get what you want.
Yes, and it's not a one size fits all. This is not, again, as you mentioned, they're highly sensitive. They are master regulators, cell signalers, cell communicators. They are driving a lot of process in the body. And no hormone is operating in a silo.
Yeah, because once you mess with one, you're
messing with
all.
Yeah. And so I think it's important, it's an interesting come through because in a lot of ways, so a lot of women are not on HRT that need to be on HRT, I believe. But then also there's a lot of people that are abusing it, like putting women on high levels of testosterone that is very inappropriate. And so, there's a lot of nuance here, but I would say ideally you're working with a provider that is looking at everything, that's looking at your symptoms and your goals, and is working with you as you start the journey, and to see how you're doing. Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to tailor it to work for your body? I cannot tell you how many times I've tweaked my hormone replacement therapy protocol, and I know it's going to keep happening.
Yours personally?
Mine personally,
okay.
yeah.
Is there a preferred frequency of getting labs rechecked and therefore changing the dosage? And also, is there a preferred starting dose for women going through perimenopause of estrogen?
Yeah, that again, it's all debatable. Most doctors are going to put you on that lowest dose. I would say in terms of application, transdermal estrogen is always the way to go, a patch or a cream, because it mitigates any potential risk, whether it's cardiovascular or, cancer. So any of those considerations, it's a very safe application, including vaginal estradiol, like that is very little to not systemic. And then progesterone, oh my gosh, most doctors are going to put you on progesterone first because it's usually the hormone that's going to drop first, that you're going to feel you're going to really feel those PMS symptoms. You're going to really feel the stress intolerance. So progesterone, and I would say the standard dosage is 100 milligrams of oral micronized progesterone. But for some women, they may need even more than that. And so I think most doctors will start with 100 milligrams of oral micronized progesterone in the second half of your cycle. See how you do, particularly for sleep. Usually take it about 45 minutes before going to bed, give or take 1 hour to 45 minutes to really help support sleep. And then if you're finding that it's not, you're not seeing symptoms being addressed or kind of mitigated, then it's a worthy conversation to talk about, well, can I see what 200 milligrams do? Okay. And same with estrogen. If you start on a low dose patch, like a 0.05, and you're not feeling the benefits, usually most doctors will tell you to give it a go for 90 days. And then, we can talk about going up another dose. Yeah.
Now, is this something, if a woman starts HRT, is she on it for the rest of her life, or just until she's no longer symptomatic or goes into menopause or on the other side of menopause? What's the timeline expectancy here?
I would say we ride them until the wheels fall off. Yeah. Because once those hormones are not in our system, we lose that protection. So once you're not taking estradiol anymore, your bone's going to start breaking down again.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, so there was we always talk about kind of that window of opportunity to get started, which is somewhere 10 years within menopause.
Yeah.
And now we're realizing, we could, if the zone of vulnerability is actually a lot of peri, why wouldn't we start women even earlier? Why should women have to suffer needlessly in perimenopause until they hit that mark of menopause?
Yeah.
Even those last 2 to 3 years, women can be in an estrogen deficit, but they're not in menopause. So we just wait.
Okay.
So we're realizing, why should women have to wait for this perpetual date, a moment in time where we can start supporting them when estrogen has been low? We know that the symptoms are so clear, the labs are so clear, right? And so we're beginning to realize, okay, at least in late peri, we should be looking at this when the symptoms really dictate. But there was this, this from the Women's Health Initiative, we learned that there's this window, this 10-year window, the healthy cell hypothesis, where if you start HRT in that window, you get the most benefit without big risk. But now we're beginning to realize that we can even go further out of that window.
Okay.
Especially because there's a lot of women like my mom, who's 64 years old, who was in that generation where it was a no-go. And now she's 65 or 64, about to be 65, and things are she is metabolically healthy. That woman just ran a marathon a couple months ago. She ran a half marathon last weekend.
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah, she's a competitive tennis player. This woman is kicking butt, taking names. She's gorgeous. And I'm like, okay, you're 64. I want you to keep feeling alive, and so it's a worthy conversation where we're looking at her labs, we're doing a carotid artery scan, we're seeing if she's a good candidate for HRT, and my recommendation is for my mom to get on it if she is a candidate for it.
I could keep going with you, but I want to leave the audience hanging on a little bit more because now they got to stop the podcast and go get the book, The Perimenopause Revolution. But I do want to ask one other question before my last question here.
Yeah.
What can, me, my wife's partner do, in preparation, or what can I do when my partner's in perimenopause? What can someone not going through perimenopause do to actually support the woman going through perimenopause that you feel is going to actually make an impact?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite questions today. I think the first step is conversation, is communication. Really doing a check-in with each other about where you're at and where she's at. Alex knows my cycle. We can tell, like even a couple of days leading into day 22, there's a little shift. I'm just a little bit more irritated. I'm a little bit more I'm just, there's an edge to me, but subtle. And it can even feel like, man, I had a really stressful day, but no, everything's declining, right? Like I can feel this shift. Although with HRT, it's been a lot less intense. And so we are like, okay, how does this next 7 days look? More alone time. Where can he pick up a little bit of support with Kingston, my son, and just giving me more space. Got more space to kind of just tend to myself and implement some more self-care.
Okay.
And I think that's really what it is if women on average take on the majority of the emotional load and the mental load, even the physical load that's going on, how can you take on more of that? Especially during a time where things are transitioning. And then a lot of extra grace and compassion. I think we can never go wrong when we're leading with kindness and compassion. But when you've been with a partner for however long and you've got kids and life is stressful and life is lifing, it can be really hard to maintain that level of compassion. But I think if your through line is my wife, my partner is going through something that is happening without her permission, and there's going to be days where it really blindsides her. Like the more compassion and understanding I can have in this journey, the more that I seek to understand and then, pick up the slack when she's really struggling. I feel like that really strengthens a relationship in such a big way.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And perfect segue into the last question I want to ask you. This information is meant to help me and my audience pull, extract, apply things in unique areas of our well-being to move us forward in life and to keep living a life ever forward. I believe I asked you this back in the day. I got to go back in time check when I started asking this question regularly, but I'll have to see what your answer was last time. If so, Mariza, ever forward, those two words, what do they mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward?
I would say that I am always envisioning my future epic health. I am very clear on who she is and what is she doing? Yeah. What is she saying yes to? What is she saying no to? What her day-to-day looks like. And because I've got that North Star, that I am so crystal clear on who I'm becoming and where I'm going, and that I'm just basically taking those steps to get to her. So I am very future-facing. I'm very future-facing in terms of my vision self. And then I every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, how am I stepping closer to her? And that's how I think about being ever forward, is stepping closer to that future epic person, that future epic health.
I don't think anyone's ever used the word epic to describe that question. And I love it. Yeah, why not? Why not live an epic life?
Yeah. Why not live a life with joy and doing the things that you love with the people that you love? Why not do it on your terms?
Yeah.
I think that's ever forward.
Well, this was fantastic. It was so great to have you back on the show. Yes. This time sitting down in person. Also, you've been a new homie for a while now in LA. It's so good to always see you out and about at all the things. And we always find ourselves overlapping at, and you name a wellness event, I feel like Mariza's there. And so it's always good to see you, outside of the studio as well. Where can my audience go to connect with you now, to learn more about the book? Of course, will be listed down in the show description and show notes.
Yeah, I mean, the perimenopause revolution is a movement. It's a rally cry for so many women who are looking for a path through. So that everywhere books are sold. My podcast is Energized with Dr. Mariza, and these are the conversations that we're having, these very nuanced conversations of how to navigate the second half of your life.
Yeah. Did you by chance, is there an audiobook version? Did you?
Yes,
do it?
Yep,
You read
recording.
it? Amazing. Okay, cool. So I'll always remind my audience.
I love Audible. Thank you,
so
Audible.
Good.
Oh.
Yeah, if you want to get the audiobook version read by Mariza, then check it out. We got a great deal for you. You can get a free trial. And I always tell, there's a little life hack. Just sign up with a different email address. You can get a free trial, which is a free credit. So 30 days free, you get a free credit. You can get the book for free, basically. Go to audibletrial.com/everforward, register a different email, and then boom, you get a free book. Yeah,
yes.
I love Audible.
Oh my God, I am obsessed. I probably consume 5 books a week because of Audible.
It's the end of the conversation. I can't talk anymore. I do Audible, and then I love to get the hard copy.
Both.
It just really helps solidify my comprehension. Also, I'm just like a hard copy, old school book kind of guy, which I can't wait to get yours and put it up on the shelf.
Yeah, especially books that have meal plans and workout plans. There's something to be said about having that because you want to reference.
Yeah.
I just like having that open. But man, I'm as a mom with a very full schedule, a full life, like listening. Yeah. Like I'm listening on the way to pick up. I'm listening on the way to drop off.
And you can like 1.5x it, 2x
I'm a 2x.
Yeah.
I'm a 2x girl.
1.4 to 1.6, depending on who's reading, is my sweet spot. But again, audibletrial.com/everforward. You can get it for free. Mariza, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.